Hi there. My name is Chuck. I'm a good friend of Fred's. Known him for quite a while. I met Fred about around 1990. He had come to pastor my church about that time, and just come out of a pretty painful divorce. Fred really helped me come out of that. He helped me tremendously. I didn't realize this, but I had developed some pretty strong, pretty deep strongholds in my life, embedded deeply into my soul. And it's taken some months, but progress is finally starting to be made. This is kind of a progress. I mean, it's not an overnight thing. You know, we're taught in society today that things are instant, that things can happen overnight, and that's just not true with walking with God. It's definitely a progress. It takes some time. This is why I believe many suffer and struggle in the church even today, because they also feel lonely, like nobody really cares. I think the church has forgotten how to truly love each other in real brotherhood. It has been my observation that Christians are more interested in themselves other than others. And I understand that families have to be taken care of and that sort of thing. But in the meantime, you can still be ambassadors of Christ. You can still care, reach out, see that bloody person that's on the road, be the good Samaritan that stops. Don't be the high priest that goes around or the other guy that goes around. Stop and help. Fred and I began our spiritual odyssey some months ago over Skype. As I said before, the lessons I have learned are very significant. First, I have learned I was still seated in the heavenlies. I was saved at the age of 12 at Grace Baptist Church in Decatur, Illinois. It was August 15th, 1972. I remember this because my 12th birthday was 1 week later. And I remember sitting in that pew after the sermon was preached, and I can't remember the exact words. I remember my heart being pricked to the very core. I remember that I was a sinner heading straight for hell, and the only hope was that Jesus Christ died on the cross for my sins, my personal sins. He bore it all, and I knew it. And I think at that moment I became saved. I began to cry and weep over my sin. I went forward and I said the prayer and all that, and I knew that He was the Son of God. That's it. Salvation occurs at that point. Fred reminded me of that. He took me back to that time, and I began to remember. And I think sometimes we need to go back to that point and remember. It sure helped me. You know, by Fred helping me to understand and recall my salvation, it did start giving me hope again. And how did I lose my hope? Well, about 5 years ago, my brother, in a jealous rage, took another man's life. I watched as my mother and father suffered. I suffered. My faith suffered, especially after my brother then committed suicide in prison. Hope faltered. Trust in God waned. 4 years ago, a very good friend of mine died of an aneurysm, aortic aneurysm. He died right in front of his son. It was very tragic. Sorrow entered into my soul again and just took up residence. On December 27th, 2011, my mother practically died in my arms on her couch. She had been diagnosed with lung cancer just a month before. She had been sick longer than that, but we didn't really know what was going on. And even though God showed mercy for taking her quickly and without great pain, I was still devastated. Anger took root in my heart towards God, and darkness began to envelop my soul. These things, they might be words to you, but I lived them. They were real. I know I should have grown closer to God during this time, but I didn't. Shortly thereafter, Fred and I began to do our study together. And this is when Fred began to explain to me God still did indeed love me. And I was still saved because of my decision when I was 12. This is where I learned my second principle with Fred in our study. And that is to give thanks for all things, for this is the will of God. Even the death of my brother, my friend, and my mom, I still need to give thanks for those kinds of things, because in those sorrows and hurts and devastation, God can use that to help you conform to the image of Christ. I had always tried to avoid these trials and tribulations, but you just really can't run from them, because life happens, and you just realize just how valuable they truly can be in your life. When you allow God to use these trials and tribulations, He begins to shape you, shape your soul into Jesus' image. It restores hope. Romans 5, 3 through 5, it kind of says it best, and you can read that anytime you want, but this is what I got out of it. We must glory in our trials and tribulations because it creates patience towards God, and God rewards this patience with experience. You must experience the pain and go through it in order to grow. It is true. Then God grants you hope and trust through the experience. Without the experience, there can be no trust. After this, we are a little more like Christ. When you realize God has given you love in your own heart, it will replace the anger and hurt. Does it happen overnight? No. Again, this is a process. And you know what? It might take some people 20 years. I think that's about the time it's really taken me.
My name is Rose McClure. I come to Hearts Alive, and I'm going to tell you what I've learned in the last year at Hearts Alive, is that I want to keep coming. I do not have addictions. I just love coming to Hearts Alive and encouraging people and watching them become a different person. The kind of person that loves herself, the kind of person that can pick themselves up by their bootstrings and charge for life. And I know it's all because of God. I feel so close to God at Hearts Alive. I feel the love that only God can give from each other here. And they're wonderful people, and you don't have to have an addiction to come here. You just get to taste for God's love and for God's growth and for loving other people. And they're like family to me. And you will never go wrong coming to Hearts Alive. You will be loved right out of your addiction.